Shridhar, yeah, finally glad to see you and have you on conversations. Uh, we call this C4C Zero Hours. It's like a conversation that we have with individuals who we are most likely to meet at Coffee for Cause, which is like a physical event that we do. And the idea is to speak with sustainability leaders, leaders who are making CSR decisions, or social sector leaders who have actually been working at the grassroots and making some impact for the society, for livelihoods, or say underprivileged communities. And Akshaya Patra has extensive reach at the grassroots, and you are supplementing the government's initiatives, primarily say the midday meal program. And it happens to be the largest organization which is doing it in the country. So I feel privileged first to speak to you and get to hear more about the program. And what intrigued me most was your profile when I was reading it. So what I had planned was probably I'll just come here and I'll read your profile and then start on with the conversation. And then there was this
program.
Yeah, and then I found something called existential purpose in your profile, and it intrigued me more. So probably I want to hear it from you. What did you mean by that existential purpose? What brings you to Akshaya Patra in the first place?
So Ranjan, I used to be in corporates earlier before joining Akshaya Patra, some large multinational companies. So about 16 years back, I joined Akshaya Patra.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to volunteer with them at the time. So I was I was transitioning from one job to another. And that was the time I was volunteering with Akshaya Patra. So I had stayed at the ISKCON guest house in Bangalore. If you have been, there's a large temple there. Akshaya Patra was born in that campus. Okay, though we are a secular and separately registered entity, it's an ISKCON Bangalore initiative when it started.
Yeah.
So the chairman of Akshaya Patra, who happens to be a monk and who's also president of ISKCON Bangalore, I knew him. We knew each other, and he called me one day to his office and he said, "Shridhar, why are you building empires for others? Build for these children who are future of this country."
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a calling for me, and I shifted from corporates to not-for-profit. That is Akshaya Patra. So that is one. And it has been a great journey. The last 15, 16 years have been very, very fulfilling. We had our own sets of challenges, but at the end of the day, when you see a happy child, when you see children, their life getting transformed in the same generation, I know it's very, very satisfying. And when you see happy children, when they get a good meal and good education and do well in life, I think nothing can replace that kind of a joy. Okay. And when it comes to existential purpose, I always believe that one needs to have direction in life. So it is like I always say that if you're on a road and you stop a person on motorcycle and ask him, "Where are you going?" and if he says, "I don't know where I'm going," okay, or you stop a person who's driving a great car with a lot of, he's wearing an Armani suit, and you ask him, you stop him and ask him, "Where are you going?" He says, "I don't know where I'm going," right? So I always felt it's very, very important that one has direction and one has purpose in life. And I realized much early in my life that all of us are looking for happiness, all. Irrespective of whether you're a believer, non-believer, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, whether you're a human being or a beast, all of us are looking for happiness. Okay, and happiness moves in circles. So when I make a deserving child happy, or I make the other person happy, that person makes someone else happy, you get into the circle of happiness.
You know what? It sounds very interesting. Yes, people who believed in this purpose and they got together and they brought this organization together. You met somebody who you knew, and that's how the social sector works. People, like-minded people, come together. They start some small initiatives, and it steadily scales up and becomes a larger organization. I want to understand the structural part of Akshaya Patra Foundation, but before that. Let's pick it up from the cue that you gave. Looking forward, where are you headed? So let's start from there, because we know how most of us know in the social sector how Akshaya Patra works, what is their mechanism, how they partner with organizations. But where are we headed, and what is the larger purpose that we are trying to solve through Akshaya Patra?
So if you look at vision of Akshaya Patra, Ranjan, our vision is no child in India will be deprived of education because of hunger. So in this last 20 years, Akshaya Patra has stayed focused on ending classroom hunger. Okay? So if you ask me how are we headed in future, we will continue to stay put and stay focused on children and giving them a good, hot, nutritious meal so that they come to school and thereby they break the vicious cycle of poverty and hunger, and thereby they are able to come out of this vicious cycle and do good for themselves. So Akshaya Patra will continue to stay focused on this. The need for a program like this is even more today due to pandemic. And as you know, that last 1 year, practically more than 1 year, 1.5 years, children were out of school. So learning outcomes have been seriously impacted. So of course, now things are slowly coming back to normal. So Akshaya Patra is very eagerly welcoming all these children back to school. And what we would like to do is to increase our reach, number one, and even more than that, we want to increase our impact in terms of going deeper, trying to see what more we can do so that children can get a hot, nutritious, safe meal day after day. We're also thinking, should we explore areas which are very adjacent to a meal program? For example, water for a school child. Okay, so these are some of the initiatives which we're working on. We're also looking at experimenting newer models. So Akshaya Patra, if you look at currently, we operate large centralized kitchens, which has a capacity of maybe 10,000 to 200,000 in size. Akshaya Patra will build the world's largest kitchen in Hubli. So we are looking at, should we experiment other models of, for example, can we look at a community kitchen? Should we look at a school-based kitchen? So these pilots are on. So we will stay focused. One of the things which we learned all these 20 years is focus is key to scaling up. And while doing all this, we want to create an employee-friendly organization. So if you come to my office, this office is a great place to work certified for 5 times in a row. So employees form a very, very important part of Akshaya Patra. They are, if you ask me, the most important stakeholder. Of course, child is also a very important stakeholder. So these are some of the things we're taking. We are also going to look at innovation and technology, which will ensure that what we do is more efficient and more effective. So to that extent, we have built the leadership deck in Akshaya Patra. So Akshaya Patra pretty much works like a corporate. If someone has to ask me to describe Akshaya Patra, I would say a person whose mind is of a corporate and heart of a not-for-profit.
Interesting. So, Shridhar, this is the question that I often ask all the organizations that primarily talk about sustainability in this domain. During the pandemic, we realized there were a lot of big foundations who were working on various causes. Because the funding shifted from one place to another, and the primary say investment area was COVID-related initiatives, the education programs, the meal programs, or several women empowerment programs. The foundations who were working around those areas, they had to suffer a lot, and their programs had to be pulled out, and the funding loop blocked in there. So how does Akshaya Patra sustain in that domain? I want to understand that financial model, economic model of that. Also, who are the primarily funding organizations or the institutions that are supporting Akshaya Patra?
Yeah. So Ranjan, when COVID struck in early 2020, I think if I'm not mistaken, March 2020, third week of March 2020, schools, we were serving close to over 19,000 schools in the country. 19,000 schools, 13 states, 1 union territory.
Wow.
56 kitchens at the time. And when COVID started, schools came to a screeching halt. Now, what do? We are a mini program, right? And we feed children in government schools. What Akshaya Patra did during this time was we quickly repurposed our strategy of food for education to food for relief. So since the time COVID started till now, Akshaya Patra has served over 200 million servings or 20 crore servings in the form of cooked meal and in the form of dry ration kits to various needy people, migrant laborers. Also to be served, we gave happiness kits to school-going children. So which had essential grocery, which had some reading material, hygiene kits for girl children. So the whole idea was how we can leverage our capacity and capability to reach out to the most vulnerable sections and do our best. So I think that paid off, that strategy paid off. And we got several awards. Of course, we never worked for awards, but the government recognized us. And today, we are coming back to normal in terms of schools getting opened up. I think barring Delhi, Gujarat, and I think Rajasthan, all other places schools have opened up. Right. So I think the strategy to repurpose ourselves really paid off. And we also leveraged our public-private partnership strength. So we closely worked with various state governments and central government in ensuring the necessary support that goes to children. Even we did deliveries of grocery kits in places where we don't even deliver cooked meals. So that's how we did.
I think so. So this doesn't answer the sustainability part of it.
How did it sustain? You're saying?
How does Akshaya Patra will continue to sustain itself? Because it's primarily on the funding basis, right? So there has to be some.
How are we going to sustain Akshaya Patra? Okay.
Yeah.
During the COVID time, or you're talking about in general?
No, in general, how does the economic model work? Is it only just donation basis, or is it like there is some sustainability factored into that economic model as well?
So Ranjan, if you ask me, the biggest challenge in Akshaya Patra is not growth. The biggest challenge of Akshaya Patra is sustainably growing.
Right.
And when I'm talking about sustainability, I'm clearly referring to financial sustainability.
True. Yeah. Understood now.
Every child we add to the system, there is a 9 rupee deficit. So every million children we will take up, you need to raise about 90 lakh rupees a day.
Wow.
Okay. So Akshaya Patra has worked on a few strategies on this front. One is there is a continual innovation process that goes on. We have Kaizen, Six Sigma initiatives that are running across the country. We do close to about 2,000 Kaizen thunders across the country every year. Okay, and so we have about 6,000 employees. So one approach is to optimize the cost of the meal. That's number one. As I always tell my team, every paisa we save in Akshaya Patra is food for 4,000 children for one whole year without raising money. So that's one aspect of it. Second is we are devising better models of resource mobilization. Internet is one of them, and internet has really done well for Akshaya Patra. Of course, corporates, trust and foundation, they continue to do. Another pilot which we did was leveraging the excess capacity of Akshaya Patra for a for-profit initiative. So we created a separate foundation which could, so we reached up to 50,000 meals, and where we were making a nominal profit, we means another foundation, and that profit was flowed back into Akshaya Patra. But that initiative, though very powerful, because we have huge install capacity, landed in trouble because of cash flows. So we have parked it for some time, but we are exploring because as Akshaya Patra, I can't do a for-profit activity. So we are exploring through sister foundations, through a separate foundation, a for-profit initiative, which over a period of time will reduce the deficit of Akshaya Patra.
Can you elaborate on that for-profit initiative? This can be interesting for non-government organizations who are not being able to raise funds. Probably they can learn something out of it.
So I'll tell you for-profit. So if you look at Akshaya Patra's capacity today. Our install capacity is 2.4 million meals in one shift. So if you run 3 shifts, probably you'll be doing about 60 to 65 lakh meals in a day. Okay, so that's the capacity, and we run only 1 shift. And the capacity is already installed. There are people, so you have enough fixed cost. So what we can do to sweat the assets which are already invested, okay, in a model which addresses the bottom of the pyramid and generates some amount of surplus which gets flowed back into Akshaya Patra. So that is the whole model which we're talking about. Basically, sweating the assets you have and leveraging on the capability for you to source centrally. For example, pre-COVID time, we're sourcing about 400 tons of raw material every day. So our ability to source, logistics, all this can be put into action for a for-profit initiative. I would say ability, the knowledge, because we can create the same thing elsewhere. So because Akshaya Patra as such cannot do a for-profit initiative, so we need to leverage this through a separate program. So that's what I mean by for-profit initiative. For example, we were doing idli batter from Akshaya Patra's kitchen. Okay, so we have huge capacity. There are a lot of possibilities that exist. If you come to our kitchens, you can see that this is huge. So if you come to our Hooghly kitchen, the capacity of the kitchen is 250,000 meals in 6 hours. Cook to consumption time. That means you can cook and deliver 250,000 meals in 6 hours time.
So these kitchens are all like Akshaya Patra owned, or they are like vendors who are on board with us who work along with us?
All these kitchens are Akshaya Patra kitchens.
How much workforce does Akshaya Patra employ?
So we have pre-COVID time we had about 6,000 people.
Wow, interesting.
6,000 people.
Very interesting. Now, if we look at the sustainability part, I understand it's like NGOs who are probably listening to this, who will watch this later, they should understand that they should get somebody from the corporate mind to sit and run your non-profit organization, run it like a business, so that it sustains on its own, but continues to do the cause or work on the cause. Any challenges that you faced in the beginning that you do not see as a challenge as for Akshaya Patra, like from the beginning of the Akshaya Patra Foundation with the journeys that you've been?
So when we started Ranjan, the challenges were how do we raise money? For example, the first 12 years, we ran this program without any result. That means till we reached 1 million children mark, we were raising money, spending. So we didn't know where the money for the next quarter or next month will come, but we were running this program. Then how do you ensure quality of the meal? Because you're dealing with perishable, you're dealing with food. Okay, so that was second challenge. Third is, and the second one, food safety is a very important aspect, because you're dealing with children who come from backgrounds who are from the bottom of the pyramid, and just because they come from bottom of the pyramid does not mean that you give them food which is of any inferior quality. So if you come to Akshaya Patra kitchen, whenever I go to our kitchens, I taste the meal which is there in the kitchen. Okay, so it is so nice, as close to what a mother will make. Okay, one can never replace a mother, but we try a bit. So these are few challenges. See, for example, one was funding, second was ensuring food safety and good quality, third was having a workforce which had the same passion of the founders. Because once you start and scale up the program, sometimes you lose touch on the passion with which the organization was started. Okay, so Akshaya Patra has been taking steps in all these areas. Okay, and I won't say these challenges have gone away, but we have to some extent learned how to deal with these challenges, and there are systems and processes put in place. Our kitchens are ISO certified. Some kitchens are HACCP certified. We have Six Sigma black belts running many processes and systems. Okay, so we run pretty much like a for-profit.
Shridhar, it seems like there was this. I'm looking at it from the business terms now. There was a social startup which started, which scaled up, which has figured out a problem, a solution to a problem that existed. Right now, it has to scale up. But how big is the problem? Uh, how does Akshay Patra see this? The problem is we have to go out there and feed those children because our country's hunger index is going up. Uh, and you've got a solution there. You've got government on board with you. You've got large corporations along with you who are supporting you, sustaining it, and scaling it up as well. But how big is the problem? And when do we see this problem can come to an end and we look at other issue, probably move on? Let's say 2050 is the target or 2060 is the target that we're looking at when this meal not reaching children would be resolved.
So let me tell you the extent of or the size of the universe of the midday meal. Okay, India has got about 1.2 million schools, approximately. Okay, could be 1.1 to 1.2 million schools. There are about 120 million children who go to the government schooling system. And India runs the world's largest school meal program, larger than China. Okay. Out of this 120 million children, close to 1.5% is catered to Akshaya Patra. Okay. This itself makes us
1.5%.
1.5%. This itself makes us the world's largest school meal program. So you can imagine what scale we are talking about in this country. Okay. So government runs a large program and they run decentralized kitchens, school-based kitchens, etc. Yeah. So coming back to your question in terms of whether this problem can be solved and when it can be solved. In my view, if the government, if not-for-profits, the youth of this country, corporate, they all come together and apply their mind, in my view, this should be more than 10 years to completely solve.
10 years?
10 years. 10 years from now.
And what's Akshay Patra doing to get all these stakeholders together? What's your effort in this?
So we are a public-private partnership, Ranjan. Okay. Right. And the first 20 years of Akshay Patra, we started with very small number, 1,500 children and 5 schools. Today we serve about 20,000 schools and 1.8 million children during the pre-COVID time. So we have created a replicable, scalable template. Okay. So we'll be very happy to share this knowledge with like-minded people, institutions, countries, etc. Somebody asked me, why don't you, have an IP for what Akshay Patra has done? So I told them that I don't want to capitalize on hunger. So more people copy what we are doing, more people replicate what we are doing, will be very happy.
Interesting.
Okay. So I personally think it's a question of will of various stakeholders and the implementation and monitoring at the ground level. If all of us come together, it's very much possible. How can we allow our children to go hungry? Suppose I have 2 kids at home. Will I allow my children to go hungry? No. So these kids are our kids, right? So how can we allow them to go hungry? Yeah. So, I think it's a question of mindset change. It's a question of being aware of, if you ask me, the largest problem the country faces is, or any country faces, is hunger, which is into a problem, I would say. Okay. So any developing nation. So I think if hunger at a fundamental level, access to good education is taken care of, I think you will transform this country.
Shridhar, what's your view on this disparities, or say the gap between the haves and have-nots increasing? What's the organization's view on that? We are talking about hunger, and that's the biggest problem in the country. But we also say we are a thriving economy. We've got rich middle class. We've got rich. In fact, the world's richest are coming from our country. So there is this, of course, major gap that needs to be filled. So what's your personal views or organization's view? We just want to hear it from you.
So when you say gap between haves and have-nots, see, I have a different view here. I feel India, if you look at India, okay, India has a giving culture. Daan is integral part of India.
Yeah.
Okay, even if you go to villages or remote parts of cities, you'll find people making one or two more chapatis and taking it out and giving it to people, right? So definitely it is they're ingrained in our system. That's number one. Second is, I feel this problem is more to do with greed than to do with need. You see, when we accumulate much more than what you need, then this gap will go. This gap will widen, right? So I think probably what we need, see, this doesn't mean that people should not increase their wealth. I'm not against it. I'm not against capitalism.
Yeah.
But I am for compassionate capitalism. How can we ensure when you put a large industry, children around that area get a good meal or get good access to education? Okay, so I think it's a question of what are your priorities. Okay, and I think it's a question of awareness also. If people become more and more aware, and that is coming up. I think I have a lot of hope on India's youth. Okay, they will transform this country.
Yeah, so that's what we are focused on, and in fact, the CauseBecause initiatives are purpose to get people on board, speak about conscious consumerism, speak about social initiatives, so that the youth, when it is they're reading, so they should know there are some people who are working in this domain as well, and this is the area to look at.
I'll just give you an example. There are 120 million children who go to the government schooling system, right? Which means 12 crore children.
Correct.
We are a land of 120 crore people. Okay? And even if you segment, okay, you have a huge middle class population, which will be definitely about 50 crores.
Surely, yeah.
So if we just decide, well, I'll just help one child, that's it.
That's it. It's taken care of.
Yeah. So it's a question of, I think, resetting ourselves. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this point, probably we need to look inward and see, am I accumulating more than what is required? At the cost of others, at the cost of others. I'm not saying you should not accumulate. It should not be at the cost of others. It should not be exploited. Okay. So that's the reason they have the gap widens.
So what is the percentage of individual philanthropy or say individual donations that you get?
What is the percentage?
Percentage, like how many people just consciously come on board, say through your online funding, or say we would just buy one meal, or
30% of what we raise comes from individual fundraising.
Wow, interesting. That's the largest I've ever heard from any non-profit organization.
30% of what we raise. That also shows the support which donors give to Akshaya Patra and the cause which we have. And see, another thing, what happens, Ranjan, is people are looking for credibility amongst not-for-profits. There are enough givers. If you look at youngsters in the country, we have a huge young population, youth population. They want to give, but they don't know whom to give. So credibility, so any not-for-profit, over a period of time, has to build good credibility, transparency, ethics. If this happens, I think not-for-profits will do well, and our country will do well. And stay focused. Typically what happens is many of them come with great ideas, but they don't scale up or try to take up different things, and then you dilute the very purpose for which you started.
Last but not least,
I'll give you one example. When in the last 20 years, there came a time when Akshaya Patra was doing very well, and somebody approached me and said, Shridhar, we will give you a large amount of money. Can you get into toilets? So I politely refused. I thanked the person and refused the donation.
Understood. Yeah. Makes sense because you have to stay focused and you have to do what you
Focus is very, very important.
correct.
Focus, simplicity, your ethics and values, these are extremely important.
Here's the last but not the least, the personal realization that has been in this sector for like you've been there for 15, 16 years now with Akshaya Patra Foundation itself. A sense of contentment probably, or the sense of
a huge amount of content. I feel I could not have asked God anything more than what I've got.
And any message that you would have for youngsters in the social sector who are just starting to do some work in the non-profits or being part of the CSR team?
So my message is to all the youngsters, guys, all of us are looking for happiness, as I mentioned to you. And there is a very strong correlation between happiness and giving. So when you give, whether it could be time, whether it could be resources, whether it could be your intelligence, you'll be happy. Which each one of us is looking for. So pick up a charity of your choice, whatever it could be, give some time and stay focused on it for a longer period of time. Okay? Because impact takes time. And to create transformative impact, it takes maybe 2-3 decades. So stay focused on what you want to do. Challenges will come and never lose hope.